I believe that music helps us to express the most deepest feelings of our hearts. And on this episode, Michelle Alonzo explored with us her song Be Still. And it was birthed out of a deep traumatic incident that happened in her life when she lost her firstborn son during COVID. So, through that painful experience, she made this song. And that's what we're going to be talking about on today's episode. So, make sure that you have a listen in on our conversation and stick around to the end because we explore some tips for music ministries and how you can manage and improve your ministries on a local church level. That's on today's episode of the Adventist Music Podcast. All right, welcome to the Adventist Music Podcast, where we share the stories of Seventh-day Adventist musicians in under 30 minutes. I'm your host, Khan Elmers. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode. Let's get right into it. Michelle, you're currently living in Houston and serving on a weekly basis at the Brazilian Seventh-day Adventist Church there. Can you run us through what a typical Sabbath looks like for you?
Wake up early in the morning because my daughter is a very early bird. So we wake up early, get ready, go drive about 45 minutes to get to church. I teach Sabbath school for my daughter's class, and then I have to quickly get ready to shift gears and go into the main service. Our church is small. It hasn't become an official church yet. We have about 70 members, so it's mainly me on the piano and a friend on the acoustic guitar. After Sabbath school, I run to the main worship area and start playing. I pretty much play background music or music for all of the different segments of the service. And then for a worship segment where we usually sing about 3 songs, my time is done after intercessory prayer. Well, and then I come back at the end and play for the closing and sing. Yeah.
That is quite
and lead worship.
It's quite a responsibility. You have a lot of opportunities there to serve in the music department of your church.
Yeah.
Because I understand that you're also leading that department, right?
Yes. So I try to get everyone involved. We're small and I'm just one person, but I'm trying to get the kids to sing as well. So we have a small children's choir. We sing about once a month in our church. And we also have a couple worship teams that I help rehearse when we can, but we have a challenge here in Houston because everyone lives very far away from each other because it's a very big city. So we have a hard time rehearsing. We rehearse when we can, but thankfully I also have great singers and great people who are very musical and very dedicated, so it makes it easier.
Yeah, and I think on this podcast, there's one thing I would really love to explore with you some more is like just how you manage those relationships in your music department with the kids and things like that. So let's definitely explore that some more in this episode. Before we do that though,
Okay.
I would like to explore some more of you about yourself and your music. So take us back to a time where you felt inspired to be a musician.
Oh, this happened many times throughout my life, but I didn't really take it seriously until I was an adult. I had some teachers who encouraged me in, high school and whatnot, but I really took the call seriously when I became an adult, and I didn't start writing music until I became an adult, which is a little bit unusual for composers, I think.
Who encouraged you to get started in music when you were younger?
It was my viola teacher.
Viola.
Yes.
Okay.
So I took viola in high school, besides piano. So I was studying at the Adventist boarding school. Nowadays it's called UNASP, the Engenheiro Coelho campus. I don't know what they call it today, actually. They've changed names several times. So I was studying there, and I was studying for a program they called at the time like a technical program in music for high school students. There was a lot of requirements, so I had to study piano, which was my main instrument. I had to study a secondary instrument plus music history and oral skills, all sorts of things. So this viola teacher, she was also my oral skills teacher, and she was a violin player. I wanted to do violin actually, but they asked me to do viola because they didn't have any violas in the orchestra and they needed. So I accepted it, and she would encourage me pretty much every class because I was very insecure when it came to music. I was very, very much insecure, and it took me decades, honestly, to overcome that insecurity, and sometimes I still have to work on it. So, but she was fundamental for me to even consider doing music. Yeah, she would. I asked one day. I said, "Do you think that I could, be a professional musician?" She said, "Of course." And she had not a single she didn't doubt for a second, and I felt it in her voice, and I felt her so her confidence definitely just shaped me. Unfortunately, she passed away before she ever heard a song of mine. I was very sad about that when it happened. She had cancer and passed away.
That's sad,
So
yeah.
she was, yeah.
So
But yeah,
when you say that her confidence shaped you, can you tell me more about that?
yes, I think I don't know your background, and I don't know how familiar you are with the musical environment in places, and I don't know how it is in different countries, but I know what I grew up in, right? Yeah, where I grew up, there was sort of an idea that music, for you to be a professional musician, you had to have like something special, like something really, really special that would set you apart, that would make you capable. And, some people would describe this as a gift from God, and some people would describe as talent, like raw talent. I had this doubt that I had, this raw talent. And in some instances, I saw that I could do some things that other people couldn't. And I thought I was, God gave me a gift on the one hand. But on the other hand, I felt that there was such a huge gap between where I was and where I saw some other musicians I admired. And I couldn't possibly think of how to bridge that gap. So to hear someone that I admired so much, because she was an excellent violinist, to hear her say without a flinch, without a shadow of doubt, that she thought that that I could do this, had a huge impact on me. But I think it was because of this sort of environment of insecurity that kind of surrounded me and that I kind of embraced. I don't think everybody does. I think maybe because of my personality, and this is what I started questioning along the years as I pursued music professionally. Some people face the same kinds of circumstances I did, but because of their personality, they might not embrace these insecurities as I did as well. I had this, I believed in this sort of narrative. But today I don't anymore. It freed me really, to write more, to pursue more, to just want to become better and better and better. And I know, I'm far from reaching my true potential, because today I really believe that we're all children of God, and God made us beautifully with all of these, amazing potential. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I like to think of it like a writer. If you're a writer who doesn't read very widely, then you're going to be
Yes,
limited in
yes,
some respects because you
exactly.
don't know exactly the techniques that other writers will use to get their points across. And so I guess the same thing
Yes,
can be with music as well. It's a type of expression and
yes.
language.
It's a type of writing. Yeah. And if you're writing just, melodies without lyrics, it's still kind of the same process. But then if you're writing lyrics on top of it, then you still have the actual writing portion of it, of writing words. And the more you know about writing, the better you're
Yeah.
going to be.
Well,
Yeah.
talking about writing, where can listeners find your music?
They can find it on Spotify. Well, pretty much all the major music platforms. Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube. It should be available in whatever platform people listen to in our country. Yeah, I think.
And tell us what you got out there right now.
Yeah, so there's an EP called The Present. I have a few singles that are out. One of them is Be Still. The other one is Your Truth. I have a cover of the song Oceans as well. I have a lot of songs that are just in my computer and in my head. And that I'd like to record and release. I'm actually working on a recording right now, but I don't know when that's going to be ready. So maybe we should do another interview for that one when I know it will be a few months before it's ready.
Excellent. Yeah.
But that one is called Unstoppable. Yeah.
Okay. Definitely, we'll have to come back to that then when the time allows. So make sure you check it out on wherever you listen to your music. But a few things before we continue with this episode today. Please rate and review. Share it with your friends. That will really help us to continue to spread the message and share these amazing stories to those who need it. So thank you guys for joining us on today's episode. So Michelle, your story, you're so connected with music. It seems like every week you're doing something new in your church and everything. Can you take us back to the time when you started working in the music department for your local church?
For this church, yes, my family moved back to Houston about 3 years ago, and we started going to this Brazilian church. And I started helping out, just playing piano and singing and just helping as I could. They had Mariana Farinha is a Brazilian Novo Tempo artist. Novo Tempo is the Brazilian
is it in a studio?
Hope Channel kind of thing.
Right.
Hope Channel. I think it's the equivalent of Hope Channel. So she's an artist signed by them, and she was a member of our church. So we do a lot of things together. Things started getting really hectic for her because she was releasing all of her music and doing a lot of social media. That's when I took over the department per se. It's a small church, so I don't know if calling it a department is really fair, but but so I just started helping organizing groups and organizing schedules, and then eventually she had to leave and go back to Brazil so that she can minister through her music. She did all of these campaigns and all of that. It was kind of like a transition in between just playing and singing and just being a regular member, and then helping organize things so that more people can participate. Yes, and now I think the biggest thing is that I have a 4-year-old daughter, and that takes up pretty much all of my time. I don't do as much as I would like to do. I would like to expand the program, so the music department, so that we have more programs, more ensembles, more things, but I can only do so much at this time. This is what this time requires of me, just paying attention to my daughter and then doing as much as I can for the church.
There's a fine balance there, isn't it? Like the relationship with your family. I would really love to explore that with you some more as well, because I think that's a big thing. So let's definitely do that later on the podcast. But in the next segment, we're going to talk about your song Be Still, which is the song that you wrote. So let's explore that together, shall we?
Sure, yes.
Christian, take us back to a time when you wrote the song.
So I wrote the song in 2020 when COVID was big. And not only that, but I was going through some rough times. So just to give you a little bit more background, I had my daughter, Eleanor, when I was 40 years old after having a few miscarriages. At the time that I wrote, so my daughter was born in 2021. I wrote the song in 2020 in the middle of COVID and in the middle of trying to figure out what was happening with our fertility, and no one could tell us, they would pretty much say, oh, it was age. But then we know that our first son was a completely normal baby that just had a stopped heartbeat. We were like, what is going on? What is happening? And whenever we had pretty much the shutdowns happening, that's when I started writing this song. I started writing when everything was kind of shutting off.
Right.
And it was pretty much a reminder to myself that God is using every circumstance and the storms in life and, the dark times to bring the best out of each of us, as he did in the storm with the disciples. And so the song is pretty much takes you back to the story of Jesus in the boat with the disciples when they had this, when the storm was happening. The first verse and the chorus, they are pretty much from the perspective of the disciples, or the perspective of the storm even. You have the waves and the thunder and the winds, and each of these things are kind of opening our eyes to things in our life that were hidden and we couldn't see, like how little our faith is sometimes, and we don't even realize. And then we need to go through a storm to really realize that and discover that our faith can grow stronger if we allow God to work through that circumstance. So that's the first verse and chorus. And then the chorus is pretty much from the perspective of the disciples saying, where are you, God? Why are you sleeping? Why didn't I hear from you still, And then the second verse and the second chorus are a play with, especially the chorus are a play with words, where Jesus is saying, I'm right here. And Jesus is saying through the second verse, you've been sailing with broken oars. You've been doing all of these things that you think, were right, but you've been sailing with broken oars. If you let me guide you through uncharted waters, you will see how your faith is going to rise. The chorus is pretty much Jesus saying, I'm right here. Why are you so afraid? I promise to be near, but sometimes you have to wait. Out of the storm, I bring you to life. And then the bridge talks about as if Jesus is saying, don't you know who I am? And why are you afraid? And then it ends with him saying, don't be afraid. It goes back to the same chorus as Jesus is speaking, and it ends with him saying, peace, be still. So that's, in short, what the song is about and where it came from. It came from these two difficult circumstances, that one that everyone was facing, right? COVID. And then another one, I was facing fertility issues. Still do. But yeah, because we're still trying to have a child, but we haven't gotten a second one. Yeah.
So you're still in the journey, I
In
guess.
the trenches.
You're in the trenches,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
No, you're not out of it yet. I guess no one really is.
No.
We're still all
It's
in the
true.
storm.
Yes.
What message would you like people to take away from that?
Well, trust God above everything. He knows everything. One thing that I hear a lot from women who have gone through similar circumstances, or who are going through similar things, or who have not have children, is that there's a tendency of saying, oh, perhaps God is allowing this to happen to me because I wouldn't be a good mom. Or actually, I heard one recently that really broke my heart. Someone said, maybe God doesn't want another of me in the world. And that just ripped my heart, because it's as though she was saying that God didn't do the right thing in bringing her to life in the first place. And it shows just how much, there's just so much pain around miscarriage and infertility in general. But what I would say to families, to couples, to women, and we need to trust God above everything. And it's not, we simply don't know why these things happen. But I do believe that God is using these things to grow our faith. So I came to think of faith as a road that is not fully paved, that has some, dips and some places that need fixing. And if we don't go through these, if we don't go through the hole, we won't know it's there and we won't know it needs fixing. So I do see all of these circumstances in my life as places where God sort of had to put a focus on so that I could see my own lack of faith, so that I could grow and repair those holes. And I think if this image helps people who are going through similar circumstances, or, not, it doesn't have to be fertility, it can be anything, as places and things we have to go through so that we can grow our faith and we can get to know God's goodness. I think, it's worth it. I think one more thing is that God made it clear to me that all of the women, and now I'm speaking to women specifically who have all these crazy ideas go through our minds, oh, I wouldn't be a good mom. Oh, I would, what I was mentioning just before. God just made it very clear to me that all of the women who couldn't have children in the Bible, Sarah, Aunt Hannah, Elizabeth, they were the mothers of the most incredible men there ever was in the Bible. So it's really not about their ability, but it's about God and what He is doing in the world, and we just don't know. So we can't say that Sarah, for 90 years, Sarah was just a horrible person and she couldn't raise a child. We can't say that. But when the time was right, not just for Sarah and for Abraham, but for the world, God brought Isaac up and God brought all of these other men up. So I think we just need to rest in God and trust that whether we have a child or not, that God knows what He's doing, and it might not have anything to do with our actual, capacity of doing a certain thing or not.
Right, because that is what faith is in essence, isn't it?
Yes.
It's putting human pride in the dust where it should be, and lifting up the omnipotent arm of God,
Yes.
And showing how He is able to save to the utmost. And so, thank you so much for sharing your story. That is so amazing, and I hope that our listeners today are also encouraged by hearing it, because I know that this issue is not somehow isolated to a small group of people. It's something that we all have to deal with in one way or the other.
Yes.
So and I hope that you have been inspired by Michelle's story. And in the next part of our episode today, we're going to be talking a bit about her music experiences and developing her music program there at her local church. So make sure to stick around for that. So you have been working with your local church, as we have talked about earlier, and I would like to come back to that, because I feel like our listeners could get a lot from your experience there, and I want to talk a bit about your experience in leading worship in your church. Could you share some tips on how somebody who is leading worship in the local church, how they could improve their worship experience?
I think the first thing is that you need to really know your local church. You need to know your members. You need to know your pastor. And you need to know what the heart of the church is, because you can't impose your tastes and your preferences on a whole church. You can influence, and you can inspire, and you can help give a new vision if your church doesn't have one. I'd say that first thing, you need to be on your knees a lot. You need to be very humble, and you need to put your, pride aside, and you need to really seek from God what will be the best for the church. And you need to be watching. You need to be in tune. But it could be that a church will not be valuing music in the way that it should, for example, and that this director needs to educate the church, let's put it this way, in the importance of music and worship. And what do I mean by this? For example, I played for a church. For some time, this church thought that music was not needed. So they actually did a test and they cut out all music from their services. And they went on without music for like a month or two. And then they realized how important music was. So because of that, then they went on this mission of getting the best musicians and getting the best, people to create the best worship experience. But I've been to churches where they don't do quite that, but music is sort of like it's just like a filler, right? We choose hymns at the last minute. We don't rehearse songs, even though we could. I'm not talking about situations like we have here in Houston that it's so difficult to rehearse. Different churches will have different like nuances and different things, but I see this very commonly actually here in the States. I don't know how it is out in Malaysia and other countries, but here in the States, I see this very commonly where there's not a lot of attention to music. It's like, oh, we just do what we can with who we have at the last minute. And if that is the case, and someone is stepping into the role of music director and trying to, grow the church, expand the worship experience, this person will need to do it in a pace that the church can't take. Because oftentimes it will take a long time for the church to recognize and to understand the value and the importance of music and of worship and preparation. And often if you study, if you study worship in the Bible, you will tremble and you will see how much thought and how much time went into preparation. If you start studying the countries that are having big growth, they're expanding churches and all that, usually music is involved. At least in the ones that I know, it's very powerful to bring people together, to energize a congregation. So I think it's crucial, honestly. But
I think many people would agree with you. It is crucial.
Well, hopefully, Yeah.
Quick fire question.
Yes.
What are the top 3 major considerations for any worship leader in their local congregation?
I think one thing that really helps is a schedule. Having a clear, well thought of schedule will help enormously. Picking the right group of people to sing together depends on who we're talking here, right? So some churches will have choirs, some churches will have smaller groups leading the congregation in worship. Some churches will have hymns, some churches will have contemporary songs, some churches are mixing them. I would say that if you are a musician and you can do this, for you to be very mindful of how you group the people who are singing. So if we're talking about a small group that is going to help lead worship, having a strong lead in the melody is usually good. And usually, I don't know, what's the situation for everybody, but usually we don't have as many people who sing harmonies. So pick just 1 or 2 people that would sing, like I usually have 1 woman in the melody, 1 male in the melody, and then 1 alto, 1 tenor. And when you start having more people being added to the group, if it's that one same group, I try to keep everybody in the melody and only the 2 people, alto and tenor, in that voice, because I'm saying this in order to save rehearsal time and but this is just an idea for people who have limited resources, like I do. So this is one idea that works well for us. What else? So schedule. On the schedule thing, I think make use of AI, like use ChatGPT, put the names there and say, okay, create a, I only tried doing this actually last week, but it saves so much time. Not that, everyone should do this, but, I have a list of names of people who sing special song, for example. And I have, a number of Sabbaths throughout the year. So can you distribute these people throughout the year evenly? That saves me some time of just
manually having to go through.
manually going through and doing all of these things. Yes, so you can make use of AI to help like save time a little bit. Another thing that I think is important, but I don't see this in a lot of SDA churches, it is to make use of the yearly calendar of your country, like the festivities, the things that are happening in the country, to inform the calendar of the church. And so in the States, for example, January is just the beginning of the year, right? So we're usually talking about New Year's resolutions and goals and dreams and things like that. February, we have Valentine's Day. If we kind of take the calendar of the country per se, and take those themes that you can find in every month, and not necessarily incorporate it into the church calendar, but just be mindful, at least the major ones, that people are open to coming to the church and they're open to looking for certain things at certain times of the year. So take advantage of Easter time to sing Easter songs, not just on Easter weekend, but throughout the month. Why not? Same thing for Christmas time, regardless of whether, discussions on whether you should celebrate this or that, or when whatever happened, regardless of those things, use this time to sing Christmas carols and use the whole month to do it, not just, one Sabbath. And I see so many times, like here we have Thanksgiving in November. Like, why don't we sing a lot of Thanksgiving songs throughout November? And this helps not just, it helps the musician or the music director to organize and select music that is relevant to what is happening in their culture. Hopefully, if the church is on board, then they're going to be selecting themes that are also in line. And then the chances of the pastor speaking on a theme and the music being aligned are a lot bigger. Even though, I know God works independently of that. So many times I've picked music and I have no idea why those particular songs were the ones that came to my mind, and boom, they're just perfect with whatever is happening. But it's not always the case. It's more often than not, what I see in the churches I go to is a lot of like improvisation and a lot of, we're going to make this fit with that, even though, we're going to make the death of Christ fit with Christmas just because it's what we had in mind and we didn't think it was Christmas time and we're singing about, I'm giving just a like random example, but does that make sense, what I said? I think just using whatever is around you in the culture, because if you have a visitor, that visitor is going to connect to what you're saying and to the music in a different way than if you're just oblivious to what's happening in the country. And when it comes to church calendar, like our church is doing something this year that's a little bit different, and it incorporates a little bit of what I'm talking about, which is they're just selecting for each month a ministry to be focused on. So, month of August will be focused on the family. Month of July will be focused on health. So even I think it's good to try and combine the whatever's happening in the country with so let's say it's Valentine's Day in your country. use that month. That month could be family month. That month could be love month, or it could be all sorts of different things, and you can use the songs to bring it all together and to make a unified, cohesive, more cohesive service.
Well, I really appreciate your perspectives on that. That's so valuable, and I hope that you guys out there have gained a lot from uh, the
I
tips
hope
that you
so.
shared. Yeah, that's really practical. I think really down to earth. Do you have any other tips you'd like to share?
Well, I think if whenever you create a schedule, stick to it. Because I think one thing that happens very easily, it's to, we have this happened, and now we have someone else who came from outside, and we have this guest. And I'm not saying don't be accommodating. Of course we want to accommodate, and we don't want to you know, if a special person is coming from outside, I'm not saying you shouldn't accommodate, but at the same time, one thing that I see happen a lot is you have a schedule of special music, for example, and then you have that person who practiced their special music for I don't know how many weeks in order to be ready for that Sabbath. And I think some people don't understand that practice goes into, for me to sing something really well, I need to put in some time of practice, sometimes a few weeks of practice, not just, a couple days. It depends on how familiar with the song. It depends on how difficult the song is. So you have all these people who are putting their time and effort into getting something ready for the church. And then suddenly it's like, oh, hey, we're just going to get you off today because we have this person who showed up here and we didn't know. And, I really try to be a stickler for honoring the person who practiced in the local church, the local member. And if the church wants to add anything, by all means do, but don't just,
Cut out. Right.
cut out the other person. Sometimes it needs to happen, and I understand, and but try to stick to the schedule. I think it's always a good thing. At the same time, be flexible. Being flexible is really a good, it needs to happen in the church setting. And it's, you have to, walk some, I don't even know some fine line. Yeah. But yeah.
I agree with that completely, because like when you have people coming from outside, you can be maybe a bit less flexible than the people who you have inside. I mean, if the people who you are having to deal with every day, every week, you need to be flexible with, because I mean, you're at a church, you don't, it's not like they're getting paid or something like that to be there. So you need to be kind of tactful in how you deal with those relationships, more so than people who are just coming in and out.
It's true. And also to really respect the people who are locally, giving their time, because sometimes that's also easier to be thrown out the window. It's like, oh, they're always here. They don't need to sing today, right? So these are things that are that naturally happen in the church setting. But I think if we pay a little bit of attention, and if we just put some boundaries, or try to put some loving boundaries. I'm not saying, you really do have to be flexible, but boundaries also help keep everything together. Otherwise you're feeling like you did all this job of putting a schedule together, and you made all of this effort, and then suddenly nobody follows it. And it's like, why didn't even do it? But a schedule is good because it gives people time to know what's ahead and prepare. And so I don't know if I helped anything, but hopefully it did.
We'll see what our viewers think. If you guys liked it, make sure you drop a comment down below if it helped you.
If you don't like it, you can share your thoughts too, and just tell us.
Give us more,
because we're always learning, right?
Yes, right.
We're always learning.
Surely there's a lot to learn, and maybe our viewers have got more experience than us.
Yes, that's true.
So, Michelle, what are some of your aims for the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, is there anything else that you're working on?
Well, yes. So, like I said before, I'm working for this I'm working on this other song called Unstoppable that I wrote for the women's ministry here at the conference, at the Texas conference. So that's going to be released in a few months. And but I think what I really, really want to start working on, and I just haven't had a chance yet, is recording children's songs. So now I have my miracle daughter, and with her came all of this new kind of world of children's music that not to say that I, hadn't paid attention to it before, but I really didn't listen to children's songs. I hadn't listened to children's songs for a long, long time, not until, when I was a child. So when I started listening to the songs that are out there, I started just wanting to write more songs. And I started not only that, but in my day-to-day life with Eleanor, just started writing little songs for her day-to-day activities, or for, I'm remembering one, a short little song that I wrote saying that she can do difficult things, because she was saying, oh, I can't do this. I can't do this. She was saying this all the time. And I wrote a little song to remind her that she can do difficult things. So things like that. Mostly I've written songs for Bible verses, actually, to help her memorize Bible verses. Sometimes I won't find a song for a particular verse I'm looking for, or for the version that I want, or in the style that I want. So I started just writing my own, and I like to share those songs with the world. But it's just been hard to be able to find time to record. I'm thinking I'm probably just gonna start just recording simple things here at home, and just recording on piano, not making like a big production, or just piano and voice, maybe a guitar, have a friend or so record with me, and record these songs and put it out on social media. That's what I'm thinking. I just haven't been able to do it yet.
Well,
but hopefully we'll do it.
Watch this space. I think that there's a great potential for some great production to come out of your home pretty soon. I notice you do have a bit of a good setup there. So, you never know what could happen with your kids project there.
Yeah.
It's actually one thing I would really love to get you on the podcast to talk about another time. Maybe when you come around and finish your track there, and you have a few tracks down, we can swing back around and talk a bit more about how you went.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So hopefully by then, I'm gonna be at least, posting some things on Instagram, and I'm mostly on Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well, but I don't check Facebook as much, and YouTube. So I'm thinking, when I think of posting things, I'm thinking maybe I'll be posting on Instagram and on YouTube. So if you guys want to know what's coming, go follow me on Instagram. That's and right. Hopefully I'll start posting sooner than later.
Yeah, I'll make sure to drop a link in the description below so you guys can check it out. Well, I think that wraps it up for this episode. Thank you so much, Michelle, for coming on. I really enjoyed talking with you, and looking forward to the next one.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. And I'll see you guys next time on the Adventist Music Podcast.